That's Rod Serling introducing an episode of The Twilight Zone more than half a century ago. Starting tomorrow, the show is back.
Imagine a television episode so controversial that it was shown once and then locked away for over half a century. No reruns, no home video releases, no streaming, just silence. This isn't urban legend. It's the true story of a Twilight Zone episode that disappeared from television history until 2016, and it raises questions about censorship, memory, and the stories we're afraid to tell. A show that dared to challenge. When The Twilight Zone first appeared on television in 1959, it was unlike anything audiences had seen before. Created by Rod Serling, a World War II veteran turned writer, the show didn't follow traditional storytelling rules. Each week brought a completely new story with different characters, exploring themes of paranoia, morality, and human nature through speculative fiction. Serling had learned hard lessons about television censorship. Earlier in his career, he'd written a drama inspired by a real tragedy, only to watch network executives gut it beyond recognition. They feared backlash from sponsors and regional affiliates, so they stripped away everything meaningful. That experience taught Serling a valuable lesson. If you want to say something important on television, disguise it. The Twilight Zone became his vehicle for social commentary. By setting stories on distant planets or in alternate dimensions, Serling could explore racism, authoritarianism, nuclear anxiety, and political persecution without triggering immediate censorship. A story about prejudice worked better if the victims were aliens. A critique of conformity landed more smoothly if it involved robots. The science fiction framework provided protective cover for dangerous ideas. For 5 seasons, this approach mostly worked. The show tackled McCarthyism, Cold War paranoia, and social injustice through allegory and metaphor. Episodes like one featuring a man surviving nuclear war only to break his reading glasses, or neighbors turning on each other during a crisis, held mirrors up to American society without explicitly naming what they reflected. But one episode pushed too far. The episode that crossed the line. In May 1964, an episode titled The Encounter aired during the show's final season. Unlike the elaborate productions viewers had come to expect, this was a bottle episode, meaning it took place entirely in one location with minimal cast. Just 2 actors, 1 room, and 25 minutes of mounting psychological tension. The story opens in an attic where a World War II veteran named Fenton is sorting through old possessions. He discovers a samurai sword he'd taken from a Japanese soldier during the war. Soon after, a young Japanese-American man named Arthur arrives looking for work. What begins as casual conversation quickly spirals into something darker. Fenton starts reminiscing about combat, about killing enemy soldiers, about how he acquired that sword. Arthur seems increasingly uncomfortable, drawn to the weapon in ways he can't explain. Then he reveals something shocking. His real name is Taro, and according to family stories, his father was allegedly a spy who helped plan the attack on Pearl Harbor. From there, the episode becomes a psychological pressure cooker. Fenton grows paranoid, wondering if Arthur has come for revenge. Arthur becomes more volatile, suggesting the sword carries a supernatural presence demanding blood. Neither man can leave the attic. Both are trapped by the weight of history, trauma, and unresolved guilt. The episode offered no easy answers. Fenton wasn't portrayed as a noble hero. He was unstable, possibly guilty of war crimes, haunted by what he'd done overseas. Arthur wasn't simply a victim either. His confession about his father's alleged betrayal added layers of moral complexity that made viewers deeply uncomfortable. And that discomfort triggered an immediate backlash. Why it disappeared. CBS was flooded with complaints. Some viewers found the episode offensive to Japanese Americans. Others called it anti-American. Asian American advocacy groups condemned the portrayal of Arthur's father as a traitor, arguing it reinforced dangerous stereotypes at a time when the wounds of internment camps were still raw. Context matters here. During World War II, over 120,000 people of Japanese ancestry, most of them American citizens, were forcibly removed from their homes and imprisoned in internment camps. This happened not because of evidence of disloyalty, but because of their ethnicity. Families lost everything: homes, businesses, dignity. And in 1964, the government had still not acknowledged this injustice or apologized. To air an episode where a Japanese-American character confirms his father was a spy felt inflammatory. It seemed to validate the suspicions that had led to internment in the first place. Network executives panicked. Rather than defend the episode or Serling's artistic vision, they quietly pulled it from circulation. For the next 52 years, the encounter vanished. It didn't appear in syndication packages, wasn't included in home video releases, and became something of a myth among fans. Some collected bootleg recordings. Others wondered if the controversy had been exaggerated. The episode existed in a strange limbo, not destroyed, but effectively erased from public memory. What made it so powerful? Here's what the critics and censors missed. The episode wasn't endorsing racism. It was dramatizing how trauma perpetuates itself across generations. Both characters were victims of violence. One as a soldier who committed acts he couldn't forget, the other as a child whose family was scapegoated and imprisoned by their own country. The actor who played Arthur, George Takei, had lived through internment himself. As a 5-year-old child, armed soldiers came to his home and took his family to a relocation camp in Arkansas. He remembers guards pointing rifles at him. He remembers his parents trying to shield him from the truth that they'd been imprisoned simply for being Japanese American. Decades later, Takei became an outspoken advocate for civil rights and historical memory. His presence in this episode adds profound irony. He was performing a story about inherited shame and violence, drawing on his own family's experience of being unjustly accused and detained. Serling's genius was in refusing to provide moral clarity. The episode doesn't tell viewers who to sympathize with or how to feel. Instead, it forces them to sit with contradiction, to recognize that both men are shaped by historical violence. Neither of them started, but both perpetuate. Why it still matters. In 2016, something unexpected happened. The Sci-Fi Channel announced they would air the encounter during a New Year's Eve marathon, the first broadcast in 52 years. There would be no edits, no disclaimers, just the original episode exactly as Serling intended. The response was immediate and divided. Longtime fans were stunned to finally see this legendary episode. Younger viewers found it raw and uncomfortable. Some praised its honesty. Others still found it problematic. But almost everyone agreed it was powerful and relevant. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. The dynamics explored in the encounter haven't disappeared. Recent years have seen documented rises in anti-Asian hate crimes, particularly during global health crises. People born and raised in America have been told to go back to countries they've never lived in. Elderly individuals have been attacked on streets. Fear and misinformation have once again been used to justify suspicion toward entire communities. In this context, the episode doesn't feel dated. It feels prophetic. The attic becomes a metaphor for unresolved national trauma. The things we keep boxed up, hoping they'll fade away, only to have them resurface when we least expect. The sword in the story isn't just a weapon. It's a symbol of violence passed down through generations. It doesn't belong exclusively to the veteran who took it or the man whose ancestor it might have belonged to. It belongs to both of them. And by the episode's end, that shared burden becomes inescapable. The broader pattern. The encounter wasn't the only Twilight Zone episode to disappear. Over the years, several others were removed from circulation for various reasons: copyright disputes, legal threats, licensing complications. Each removal happened quietly, decided by executives and lawyers rather than audiences. This raises important questions. Who decides which stories get remembered? Who determines what's too controversial to show? And what do we lose when difficult art gets buried rather than discussed? Rod Serling spent his career fighting these battles. He grew exhausted by the constant need to soften scripts, disguise political meaning, and navigate sponsor sensitivities. He once described his job as the art of self-censorship, not a joke, but a bitter reality. The irony is that many of these suppressed episodes aren't especially extreme by modern standards. They're quiet, thoughtful, morally complex. They ask questions that make people uncomfortable, which is precisely why they matter. The return and legacy. Today, the encounter is available again. It can be streamed, discussed, and analyzed by new generations. Its return doesn't erase the controversy, but it allows viewers to engage with it rather than letting executives make decisions on their behalf. The Twilight Zone itself has seen modern revivals, including a 2019 reboot and upcoming adaptations. These projects prove that Serling's approach, using speculative fiction to explore uncomfortable truths, remains relevant. Shows examining technology's impact on humanity or societal breakdown follow the same blueprint. Present the familiar, distort it slightly, and force audiences to confront reality. The Encounter reminds us that trauma doesn't follow neat timelines. It lingers, mutates, reshapes identities, and unless brought into the open, poisons everything around it. The episode dared to show two men trapped not just in an attic, but in cycles of guilt and rage neither could escape. 55 years after being hidden away, this story has returned not because society became more comfortable with it, but because we're finally ready to admit what it was trying to say all along, that the past doesn't stay buried, that justice requires confronting uncomfortable truths, and that some conversations, however difficult, need to happen. The question Serling asked in 1964 remains unanswered today. What kind of world are we building? Who gets to survive in it? And who gets erased from the story? Perhaps the most important legacy of The Encounter isn't the episode itself, but what it represents. A reminder that art should challenge us, make us uncomfortable, and force us to examine ourselves. When we bury stories that do this, we don't eliminate the problems they expose. We just stop looking at them. And that might be the most dangerous thing of all.